I'm Christy Anderson from For It Is Written Ministries. I help people study the scriptures effectively using sound biblical doctrine and principles of interpretation. Today we're looking at Mark 7:19. In this quick take 5, what we're looking at is translator bias. And here we're going to look at 3 different versions of the text in order to see how translator bias comes into this particular text. Now, sometimes when translators add words that are not in the Greek or the Hebrew, this can be helpful because sometimes it's kind of doesn't translate exactly, and so we need a few extra English words, so it makes the English translation smooth and we can understand the full meaning. Because remember, meaning has words. Words do not actually have meaning. We use words to convey meaning, but meaning is pre-existent because God himself is pre-existent and he decides what everything means. Now, we're going to use words, and that's what translators do when they're going from one language to another. And so here in Mark 7:19, if we look at the text, we see in the King James Version, which was done around the 1600s, they had different biases and ideas about the scripture than a modern version in the 1900s. And so you'll see this particular bias creep into the text. Now, the King James Version reads, "Because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth into the drought, purging all the meats." Here I've shown you in the red, blue, black, and green 4 very important words, and we'll see how translators do different translations of these in the various texts. So this will help you if you don't speak Greek, that you'll be able to follow along which Greek words, and then you can go look them up when you have time. Now, when we look at the interlinear version, it says in the last section, "In the toilet," or privy they would call it, "is expelled," then purging or cleansing, purging and cleansing, those are each synonyms in the English. The King James picked purging. Then we have the word for all, the, and then bromata, or foods, or it can be translated foods or meats, meaning food. Cleansing all the food or meats. Now, what we see the translator bias creep in is in the NIV version. And that one reads, "For it doesn't go into his heart, but into his stomach, and then out of his body. In saying this, Jesus declared, all the foods clean." Now, right off the bat, we can see some very different focus and different referent of these key terms. And we see, number 1, a switching of word order, a manipulation of the semantic range of words for clean, and in particular, thus changing the meaning, and the context is ignored, thus justifying a false doctrine. Because if you have a presupposition that says, well, God did away with Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14, then you're going to think, of course, this has to be referring to that God did away with that so I can eat whatever I want, whatever I decide is food, whatever my culture decides is food. Unfortunately, the Bible defines food in Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14. And so when this bias comes in, we see how it slips in by these particular manipulating of the text. Notice, if in the King James Version we're talking about going to the bathroom, in the interlinear version we're talking about going to the bathroom. When something unclean might pass your lips, like when I was hiking one day and a teensy tiny little bug flew right in my throat and down my throat before I could cough it out, that was an accidental ingesting of something unclean. And my body is designed to purge that uncleanness from me. What Messiah said is it's not so easy to purge the heart of uncleanness. And so this is part of the context in which this verse might come into play. Now, when the NIV version comes in, notice how they add all of those words that are crossed out. In saying this, Jesus declared. That prejudices your whole context for the 4 key words in the Greek, because clearly that's not in the Greek. It says then they manipulate the word order based on changing the cleansing, the meaning and the semantic range of the word for clean. which can be purging or cleansing. It goes from purging or cleansing, meaning going to the bathroom, gets changed to clean, as in something acceptable and clean and able to be eaten in this case, or that's acceptable to God. Okay, so when you use the semantic range of a word and you pick the wrong one, then you change the meaning. For example, if I say, I love my children, and then I say, I love ice cream, automatically your mind suppressed the right and proper semantic range of the word love between ice cream and my children. You understood without even thinking about it the correct semantic range of the word love and which one to apply to which meaning, in which context, because context dictates. And here we see the manipulation of the semantic range of the word clean such that you get the impression that all foods are clean. Now, the trick that these translators can't get out of is that all foods are clean. The problem is God defines what is food. So it's true that all foods are clean. According to Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14, only certain things are food. So it is true that all foods are clean, even, bread, meaning you can't just have ritual cleansing of the hands and say, if you didn't ritually clean your hands before you ate bread, that somehow bread, which is food, because God declared it to be food, you can't say that that's not acceptable to eat or not acceptable food. So in that context, you can understand how these word plays and these different understandings and cultural contexts are very important when it comes to interpreting the text. So this has been a 5-minute short. If you have any other questions on this or other texts related to it, feel free to email me at fortiswritten.com. Thanks and have a great day.